Here are the deadliest weapons across every era in history. Stone Age. When humans were still sleeping in caves, the options for killing each other weren't nearly as exciting as they are today. For most of the Stone Age, your best weapon was simply a rock. Surprisingly effective. A single powerful blow could completely smash a human skull like an egg. And it wasn't even bad when thrown from a distance. Then someone had the brilliant idea of attaching a sharpened stone to the end of a stick and calling it a spear. About 70,000 years later, someone else said, "Man, I really hate that guy over there. But he's way too far for me to stab him with a spear. And he's even too far to throw a rock at." You're wrong. Simple weapons like these were all we had for a large part of our history as humans. But as civilizations expanded around the world, weapons were forced to evolve and become more complex. Bronze Age. Take the macahuitl, for example, an ancient weapon used by the Aztec civilization in Central America. This weapon combined the best features of a wooden club with several small daggers made of sharp obsidian blades on both sides, making its wounds almost impossible to survive. There's another weapon that was less effective but carried a far more interesting story. The trident, originally used for fishing. Fun! But it was also used in the Roman Colosseum as the primary weapon of a type of gladiator known as the retiarius. A retiarius was typically equipped with a trident, a small dagger, and a fishing net, wearing very little armor or clothing. He would face gladiators with much heavier armor, relying on his speed and agility, attempting to entangle his opponent in the net while simultaneously trying to stab him with the trident. The trident caused small, non-lethal wounds, just enough to prolong the fight for the audience's entertainment. The most famous weapons of the Bronze Age, however, were slings, swords, and various types of spears along with the shield. And despite their usefulness in individual combat, they were far more effective in military formations such as the phalanx, where soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder and advanced almost unstoppably. But these weapons were far less effective against the heavily fortified castles that became common in the Middle Ages. And necessity is the mother of invention. And when the need is to storm a castle and mercilessly eliminate all your enemies, the right invention is siege weapons. Middle Ages. Siege weapons were massive machines usually operated by multiple soldiers, and they were excellent at destroying the dreams of kings. There were many types of these weapons, but here are my favorites. Siege hook. A huge device used simply to pull down a section of the wall and make it collapse. Effective and simple. 4 stars. Heavy trebuchet, invented in ancient China. Larger and more dangerous than the ordinary catapult, capable of throwing a 200-pound stone a distance of about 275 meters. Terrifying. 5 stars. Ballista. Basically a giant destructive crossbow. A regular bow is already cool, so imagine one the size of a house. 5 stars. Battering ram. A massive log carried by soldiers to smash into gates until they break. Effective, but extremely exhausting and annoying. Imagine the splinters, the smell of wood, and the pain if it falls on your foot. 0 stars. While some civilizations were developing land-based weapons, others were inventing naval weapons, like Greek fire. It was a sticky substance that ignited and kept burning for hours, even on water, making it catastrophic for any ship. The Romans would pump it through tubes toward enemy vessels or store it in bombs thrown onto the decks of other ships. Its effectiveness was so terrifying that the Byzantines kept the formula completely secret. Even today, we don't know its exact composition, but it resembles what we now call a napalm, modern era, and the beginning of firearms. We have reached the point in history where the weapon that changed warfare forever appeared. The gun. Modern firearms are unbelievably effective at killing. In the year 950, the ancient Chinese placed a tube filled with gunpowder at the end of a traditional spear. When ignited, it blasted fire outward, and later they added small metal fragments that shot out with the explosion. This was the fire lance, a combination of a spear, a flamethrower, and the first gun in history. Personally, I would never want to be on the wrong end of it. With this era, the goal was no longer simply to kill the enemy, but to kill them faster and more brutally, opening the door to far harsher innovations. The two World Wars. World War I completely changed the way humans dealt with violence. With the end of the Industrial Revolution, humanity possessed many new technologies it was eager to test in killing. Soldiers witnessed a massive advancement in machine guns and hand grenades, the appearance of tanks, and the rise of warplanes. But these were not the most horrifying weapons of the war, not even close. Imagine yourself as a soldier in the trenches. Days pass with no fighting. Then suddenly you see a huge cloud of yellow-brown gas rushing toward you. You run. But it's useless. The gas surrounds you. Your skin begins to blister and burn, your eyes swell shut, and breathing becomes unbearably painful. You scream. Everyone screams. And if you survive, you may spend weeks suffering from blisters, pulmonary swelling, vomiting, blindness, before you die. This was mustard gas. Toxic gases were later banned because they were inhuman beyond description. The war ended, but it was far from being the war to end all wars, as people claimed. The Second World War and the final weapon. The war began, it continued, and countless lives were lost. But its ending was unlike any other conflict in human history. The great powers entered a race to build the ultimate weapon, the nuclear bomb. When uranium-235 is compressed enough, a massive chain reaction occurs, creating a terrifying explosion. The Americans were the first to succeed, after many scientists lost their lives during the experiments. The first bomb, Little Boy, was dropped on the city of Hiroshima on August 6, 1945. Tens of thousands were killed instantly, and many more died later from radiation. The war ended less than a month afterward, but something painful had become clear. You cannot fight an enemy capable of unleashing hell from the sky unless you can unleash the same hell upon them. The world began a nuclear arms race, striving to create even bigger and more powerful bombs. It was discovered that nuclear fusion, the very process that powers the stars, produces far more energy than fission. And so the Tsar Bomba was created in the Soviet Union in 1961. Its explosion cloud rose to an altitude of 67 kilometers, as high as stacking 8 Mount Everests on top of each other. The nuclear bomb in all its forms is, hopefully, the last weapon humanity will ever need. There is no real defense against it, except the fear of equal retaliation. And maybe, just maybe, after this final nightmare, it's time for humanity to stop destroying itself and do something actually useful, like pressing the subscribe button.